Awesome. Appreciate it. Brett Krajewski, Head of Research and Growth here at Accelerant. Pleasure to have Trevor joining me. We'll be talking a little bit about P.U.R.E. For those that are on the line, yes, we are recording these webinars. They will also be uploaded to YouTube. So in the future, you're able to, search for Accelerant or even go to the resources page that Bill just flashed up, and you'll be able to go to past conferences all the way back from 2020 till the one that we're hosting today. But without further ado, wanted to introduce our expert that we've brought in, the guy that's helped create P.U.R.E. Method and also take P.U.R.E. Method to that next step. Those that aren't familiar, prior to my time at Walmart, I wasn't exposed to P.U.R.E. But how great of a methodology it is and how practical and usable it is for agile teams and quick spaces. But Trevor, I'll let you do a quick intro about who you are, and then we can kind of jump into what you have prepared today.
All right, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Bill. Thanks, Brett. Can you hear me okay? Everything's good? All right, great. Well, first of all, I just want to say thanks to you, Bill, and the rest of the team for having me on today. P.U.R.E. is it's a really powerful way to quantify qualitative data, and I've literally seen it transform many orgs. And I've been kind of evangelizing it for the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years around places. And the more I get into it, the more I dive deep into it, the more I realize how it's so needed right now. And it has all these fun, secondary effects as well. So I love talking about it. I'm actually currently helping implement it across a large organization, like in a UX research ops capacity. So that's like literally what I do during the day. So I'd love to kind of talk about it today a little bit too. So, did you want me to share screen? How do you want to do?
Let's do it. Yeah, I know you have those slides prepared. So I think flashing that stuff up, P.U.R.E. is a newer concept to most people in the UX space or even the research space. So I think some visuals might aid in helping those kind of follow along and understand.
All right, great. Yeah, so I didn't really prepare much of a slide deck. It's just got a couple of key points here, and I thought we could kind of just riff and talk. So feel free. This is more of a conversation. I'm way happy to talk about how to implement this in the real world, in your own organizations. I've been doing it, like I said, for a long time. And I'd love to just, I was looking at the attendee names as they came in via Zoom, and I actually recognize some of these names here. So, but I don't recognize many of you. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask. I'll literally, give you my take on how I would approach doing this in your own org. But first, let's just talk a little bit about it. And Brett, feel free to jump in whenever. So, oh, this is outdated. I'm at 19 plus years now. I got to update my thing. So my name's Trevor. I've been doing UX forever. I've been doing it for I'll be going on 20 years after this year. And I started off as a UX research slash designer, but then maybe the last about 14, 15 years, I've been just doing UX research. So I've been around, my first job titles didn't have UX in the job title, and I've been around through all many different kind of ups and downs throughout the profession. So I come at it from a slightly different perspective than some people, but mostly just been there, done that kind of stuff. I have most of my experience in-house teams, but this is also good for, I did a 2-year stint at a digital agency in which I was like the head UX strategist. And we actually bottled, P.U.R.E. is so, it's so like a modular thing that we were able to bottle that up as a product and sell it. So if there's people here at digital agencies or research agencies or things like that, we can talk about that. But mostly I've seen the effects happen at scale within larger like orgs. Oh, and I also write a weekly blog, so check me out on Substack. There's the QR code. It is here. I'll show you. I got it. I do funny illustrations because the content is so dry. So these are like funny retro illustrations, but it's hardcore, deep dive, 2,000, 3,000 word articles about advanced UX research, including I have a bunch about P.U.R.E. So I can put those in the chat as well. So I'll just keep going here. Interrupt me if you want. But
yeah,
so just what? Yeah,
I was going to say that is one of our offerings, right? So we are versed in P.U.R.E. Method. So
Oh, nice.
Trevor and I talked offline and obviously connected over, geeking out about methodologies. And one of the things was one of our first conversations was P.U.R.E. Method, and bringing that to Accelerant, but also my time at Walmart and how we scaled that with a three-step method of heuristics into pure into usability and how quick and agile that can be. But obviously focusing on pure method today, and that is something that we do offer to many clients here at Excellion.
Nice. Yeah, how does that go? Like,
Yeah, I
day
mean, it really depends, right? It's kind of like what we talked about offline of, how we pair pure with usability. So bringing in participants to do the pure method with a usability kind of task orientation. So it
Mm.
could be remote IDIs where we're having them go through more of a guided session and having those pure method or that pure scale on the back end, or even, it could be more feasible where it's more like that traditional pure where you're having that panel of 3 to 5 experts and having our clients start learning how to do that methodology, implement that methodology. It gives them that base, just like base marking of just where their design or where their product is right now and where they can focus in. That's been a big thing over the past, let's say, 2 years of just like how do we just find where we're at in parity in the ecosystem of products or designs or all those things, right? Features. And how can we then measure that to start correlating outcomes from the outputs that we're doing? And Pure is a great, agile, and useful, like you said, it's qualitative at stat sig, or not at stat sig, but it's qualitative research in a quantitative, digestible way where it gives them some kind of benchmark to be able to move forward and show the improvements of their whatever they're producing, right?
Yeah, it's like a lot of teams that I talk with, and including the current one I'm helping right now. They talk to me about like, well, we do a pretty good job with satisfaction. They have some kind of like sus thing going on, some kind of benchmarking in that way. We have a good sense of, time on task, because they have analytics. But like, what about usability? What about like a vast majority of what we, the things we bring to the table? When we're differentiating ourselves as user experience professionals against product management type, uh, the 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 one place where we really, really can shine is under usability. And this covers all the rest of that. And I think of it as a really nice way to triangulate. So yeah, PURE, for those that you don't know, it's an acronym like all the crazy stuff in our field, right? Pragmatic Usability Rating by Experts. This was done, Christian Rohr and some colleagues in the fintech space kind of came up with this idea. They evangelized it. They wrote some papers about it, and then it's slowly been dripping out into the real world. So I didn't know you did this at Walmart. So I have a slide with just like a random set of organizations. I didn't put Walmart on there.
I was gonna add that last night as we went through it,
Yeah.
but it was actually a colleague of mine from Capital One worked with Christian as well.
There you go. Yeah.
He brought it from Capital One to Walmart, and that was kind of his Devin Singh, who I don't think is on today. But he was the one that kind of set up that three-step method. So going into heuristics, then going into pure, then going into usability, and obviously you can fall out at any point. So it more made it an approachable way to interact with research, right? That's been a major issue I've heard from our clients, being an in-house, being an agency. Research takes too long, or we're a cog in the machine. Versus this was a scalable way to say like you can fall out of that process at any time, but it also pushed evangelizing research within a Fortune Global 1 company.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's awesome. So I'm going to speak a lot today. I've taken what Christian has published, and then I have had a few side conversations with Christian himself about these things, but I've taken it even further. So I'd love to talk to you about how to actually do this, like how to make it happen in the real world. That's the whole idea here. So you get these kind of graphs at the bottom. So imagine a world in which you can, take a standard heuristic evaluation or heuristic review and boil it down to graphs that your stakeholders see all the time. That's what this does. It quantifies qualitative data. And I think it's really, and specifically usability data. And I think it's really, really powerful. And it's been proven to be as reliable as like the stuff that people already, or more than the stuff that people already kind of like adopt. So, you know, we'll just go past this, but if we want to talk further about the reliability about it, I'd be happy to talk a little deeper about it. And then just these, this is just a random group. It's not comprehensive of orgs that use this. the reason why I knew these is I either know the people at the company that are running P.U.R.E, or I've literally implemented it myself at these places. And I try to pick a random variety. So there's fintech, it's pretty big in fintech, but there's fintech, there's, just tech, there's an education, home science tools is an educational organization, Stanford, of course. Um, let's see where there's Raleigh. Oh, that's the city of Raleigh. That's where that is. So governments use it. So it really is something that when adopted can really kind of transform orgs. And it's starting to get more and more popular from what I've been seeing. Let's just dive right into it. So the process for those of you who don't know is you need, by the way, I'm going to derivate from any of the like Christian Rohr writings and just say how I do it. So this is like how it works in the real world. Is that cool? If anyone has any questions, you can hit me up in the chat. Oh, I also just put in the chat all my writings on P.U.R.E if you want to really dive in deep on some of my thoughts. So this is how do you make this method, this process, how do you actually do it within your orgs? So what I did was I broke it down into these steps. So step one, I've got this idea that you have a subject matter expert, which is usually your product lead UXer on any individual product, and then trained UX adjudicator. So the pragmatic usability rating by experts, they're the experts. And the reason why you don't want your lead UXer on the project, by the way, this is for larger teams, but you can scale this out. It can be done. It can be done differently for smaller teams. I can talk to you about that. Go to different places like Accelerant that do this. So yeah, you get your lead UXer. They should not be scoring their own thing. That's the beauty here. And I'm going to explain a little later why that has all these great, second order effects. But so, if you're the lead designer and you have enough staff or enough trained people that can understand this, or you have a great partner like Accelerant that can help with these kind of activities, you get 3 or more trained adjudicators to adjudicate the thing through the system.
I liked your point there, Trevor, about like don't be doing it yourself, right? If it's your product or you're the one designing or researching this, there's that removal. There's obviously bias. You also know the flows, you know the task and how to get the success. And yes, this is a heavily guided methodology, where that lead UXR, that's me, is very much hands-on guiding those trained UX experts in the process. And it is very leading at times, you might say, right? But it's that separation of church and state, right? So when we would implement this, or when we do implement this with clients, we try to tap into a diversity of people that come in as that expert, right, and put on their hat of whatever group or persona that they might need to put on in order to act out the task that we're going through. So a lot of the time we recommend to clients, both internal or external, don't be the ones that are evaluating your own. It also helps you get buy-in, right? So getting some different diversity of like engineers or product or design folks within the larger ecosystem of your company can show kind of what this methodology can do. Can also show the output where they're a little bit more bought into the power of research.
Yeah, so you're not scoring your own thing, so it's not the same person they see every day and their stand-ups coming back and saying, "Hey, look, we did this thing, trust me, blah blah blah." Another thing, I put like subject matter expert there in parentheses because I've explored not the SME role in this way being the lead UXer. It could be the PM, it could be a stakeholder, it could be literally anyone that can go through the process and the process as which I've defined it for expedience. Um, so that's kind of a neat, interesting thing. I actually have tried training other non-UXers on the trained adjudicator part, but it doesn't work. It's just like, that's just our profession. It's what we do. It's the E of P.U.R.E, is the expert part. But we've played around with like I said, I've been doing it for about 8 years in all different orgs, and we've tried many, many different flavors. And this is the one that's worked time and time again for multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerates all the way down to some small startups where I've done this, including the firm that I talked about. Step 2. I have a little secret, do like a task analysis. I think it's this like UXR method that is old school that people rarely do for some reason that's super powerful. And I have rebranded it as a top task list. But it's essentially your task analysis and you do your top tasks. And I describe top tasks as usually your 10 to 15 most um, uh, commonly done or most impactful tasks. And you want to pick ones that kind of, I always say, like crisscross applesauce across your interface. You don't want ones that are all parallel that are doing the same thing. So that way you get, it's not a comprehensive, like a full screen by screen heuristic review, but what you get is a really good sense. Again, in an agile world where you need to move fast, you get a really good sense of what works because these interaction patterns are usually pervasive across any one experience, you know. So by having the subject matter expert, you sit down with the subject matter expert up first, and you figure out the top tasks. That's a great first step for any other research, by the way. So I tag this in the beginning of P.U.R.E. just because that you could do a moderated usability test. Unmoderated, it could help you write surveys. It could help you do any other things by framing it in a user-centered way, simply by doing that number one of step two, top task list. And then you break those down into interaction steps based on the user's happy path. This is the one bias of, well, there's two biases, but there's one bias of P.U.R.E. is that it's based on happy path. So it's not like a real usability test, right? So it's not necessarily user-centered as in real users will interact with this, but it is user-centered in the fact that we'll be framing it in top tasks, we'll do the happy task, and then we'll be evaluating it from like, just think of these as like heuristic review light. It's like a heuristic review without all the red lines. And the reason why I think it's better than a heuristic review in most cases in the real world in like larger orgs is simply because I just went through my career so long before I saw met Christian and started thinking about P.U.R.E. was I just saw so many heuristic reviews of my own and others like just sit on someone's desk. It's just like a snapshot in time, and they just like they were not actionable. It was like, here you go. Here's a couple recommendations, and then it's gone and never used again. So the beauty of P.U.R.E. is imagine you could take that and then make a number out of it and a graph, and then use that as a benchmark to grow and change over time.
I usually equate it to Rotten Tomatoes, right? Like the
Yeah.
site for movies, and it gives you some, like you said, it's actionable, where it's giving you that relative score and gives you almost like a color coding that people's eye not only draw to it, but then you can start segmenting by those top tasks, right? So then you can start kind of targeting, okay, I know, these are in the green, but then these higher ones are the ones that I really need to focus in on. And then you can continue to iterate and test and go through the flow again and again in order to optimize the experience, in order to, create more of a usability centric experience or user centric experience, which then can go into usability testing, right?
Precisely. This is a great step before you launch anything, before you get it in front of real users, before you have a beta, before you have a working prototype, right? This is a great first step. And I believe one of the key factors of this that make it so valuable too is because you're breaking it down into these like each interaction step. What you're going to find is, well, at the end, because we'll be able to score it, we'll have like a prioritized list of stuff to fix, right? And you're going to find that many of the same like patterns that are pervasive throughout your entire app, website, whatever you're looking at interface, will be they'll crop up time and time again. So it'll be like, hey, fix this. It's just like a moderated usability test in the fact that at the end you're going to get a list of stuff to fix, and you should just fix it, period. But the one thing it does a little better is it gives you a nice little prioritized list for those on a budget. Trying to, you got to triage this kind of stuff. So we'll tell you what will have the biggest impact. Then step three, this is how I actually do it. I set up the adjudicators and the subject matter experts after the top task has been put together. So you have a list of tasks. Each task has a list of steps, and they share their screen in Zoom just like this, and everyone divergently scores as the SME goes through each of the top tasks one step at a time, and they score. And we'll talk about the scoring later, but they score, color code style, like depending on what kind of scale you're using, and then they they score each individual step kind of in a vacuum. You don't want to be like, when I train people on this, typically a lot of people try to be like, okay, it's like a journey map, right? Like, okay, I'm going to put my persona hat on. I'm, like Larry the Laggard. So no, no, it's not that. You are an expert and you're evaluating this just from the knowledge of UX best practices. And by breaking it down step by step, when you're pretty much just looking right where, right where the user is looking, like we have a lot of eye tracking data that says users are looking right where their cursor is. It's right at that point of impact. We're really dialing in on like the interaction design part of this and the usability. And then the subject matter expert after it's nice to have the subject matter on the line because then the experts can ask questions, because you can do it on anything, but like it could be a paper prototype. This happens before high fidelity, in my how I like to recommend it. And then the subject matter expert leaves the meeting and the adjudicators converge to agree on a final score for each of the steps. And that's how it goes. It's not an average. Everyone has to agree, and kind of like the best argument for each individual score wins out. And that's how you get your final scores. That's just the simple step. And then you make this great, it can give you the ability to make these kind of graphs. I won't go too deep into this unless people have questions about it. But you can see these are literally from real examples. I've just scrubbed the identifying information and changed the numbers and stuff. But you can see there, like task 1, understanding the curriculum. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps in that task. Each one was ranked a different way. And the way P.U.R.E works is, and what Christian says in his articles is like, you want it to be like golf. You want to have low numbers and on the green. So you can see that first task scored a yellow, which is not green. So you'd like to get it back to the green. Sign up for email was all green. And then you can see the orange down at the bottom. Now, and the way these numbers work is you just add them up. So if it's the little greens here are like that's a 1. Like look at task 2. There's 3 little greens. So those would be counted as 1. And then the 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, that's like miscalculated. That should be a 7. I told you I mixed the numbers up, but imagine that was a little 7 in the green square there. That's funny. I just made these graphics yesterday off of real reports, so it was kind of funny. Anyway, imagine a world in which you could talk about usability like this. And then imagine a world where the next time you go through, you can also, I can talk to you about how to convert these to a percentage. This is something I do differently than anyone else, but I can talk to you about how to do that. Let's see, we got a question here. Top tasks are big in our org, but they often feel disconnected from UX research on the ground. This method seems like such a great way to bring them all together. Yes, great point. Yeah, I think a lot of people are doing that kind of activity in our orgs. Sometimes, and it's not inherently a UX researcher's job to do this, but why not? And why it seems to be fit right in our wheelhouse. And I believe it's a really good foundation for all other research. So when I train teams on how to do like moderated usability tests, the first step is I just tag on a top task list exercise to go through. So there's my simple, everything's steps, right? There's my simple 4-step process. You assign the roles, you find the right people, you do a top task list and break it down so you know how to score it. You do the scoring live. People argue with me on this, but when you do the scoring live, it is hard to get all these people in a meeting at once. But imagine the time savings here, just in general. Like the turnaround time for a report is like super fast. And then I even recommend people don't even worry about the reports and scoring for now. Just do what Christian Rohr says in his articles. You don't need to get too deep, but there are ways to turn them into percentages and then to have those be benchmarks that are over time. So inherently within a P.U.R.E report that I make, I always put V.1 or V.0. So it's inherently asking for another revision. And you can always run another one of these. And another beauty of it is once you have that top task list, you can just use the same one to run your usability tests. You can use the same one to do any of the other methods. You've already done it once. And then if you run that top task list exercise up front as well, then you'll be able to go back and, again, benchmark this against itself. By the way, that's why I converted to percentages, is simply because people were really confused about, they had to really get trained on the method, So like, it just like in the P.U.R.E method, the aggregate number at the end is meaningless. It's only meaningful to itself. But if you're then able to figure out some kind of benchmark, like I do here. See that goal? That's like a benchmark that this particular organization has agreed upon. They want things higher than 75% of the UX heuristics accounted for and above a a 2. Um, so
When we
and
were
then
doing this, Trevor,
yeah, go ahead.
we utilize like we would correlate our other statistics, right? So NPS, ASUS, an adapted SUS score. And as we released certain features or products or made iterations on it, we could then go back and do that same P.U.R.E method or same P.U.R.E usability score in terms of that product or feature and be able to continuously benchmark that one design off of what the response was, right? So then we can start showing the correlation of the work that we're doing, which is for many times very difficult within the design and research space to show what that outcome is of what the output is, right?
Yeah.
And then start being able to measure and show to executive or C-suite, what we're doing and how it's impacting the organization.
Yeah, and it's just like they're used to seeing stuff like that, right? So how many times did I, before I was doing the P.U.R.E method, how many times did I go into some meeting and I was like, trying to explain like Jacob Nielsen, like invented this idea about, and it's just like, oh boy, they don't want to hear any of that. But that's where that transitions to this. Behind the hood, how do we keep this legit? It's based on the Jacob Nielsen 10 usability heuristics, at least the way I do it. You could do it off of any rubric you want, really. But I like I like Jacob's 10. And I literally have like a oh, I had a typo. It said 15. I've added 4 things to my rubric, but I have it. I can share this if you like. Here's the criterion rubric that I use. I'll put it in the chat actually, and I think that the Zoom chat's not big enough to hold all that. So I'll put it in 3 different things. But I can share this doc too. There's nothing cool about it. But you can see the first 4 are added, and then the 5 through 14 are just the Jacob Nielsen. And then I have a little blurb on what those things kind of mean in context here in my own words. And then I put that blurb in. So I use a Sheets or a Google Sheets or a Excel spreadsheet to do the scoring. That creates those little graphs, which is why that one was off because it must have had some like uh, formula problem in the sheet. But anyway, but you can hover over the little thing and you'll get the little tooltip with the explanation. So this is another way to get this like evangelized across your orgs. So here, let me just real quick, I'll throw them in there. I'm sure most of us are familiar with these, but I do find, I mean, maybe it's a good time to start talking about some of the second order effects because some of the second order effects you have here is, there we go. There's the first, it looks like I can get 6 in at a time. So, and then here's 7 through, sorry, I pushed your email way up in the chat or whatever you put in there. There's the rest. Um, that's just how I think about it. Again, this is derivating from the Christian Rohr stuff, but I've seen it work in the real world. So that's why I like to share it. Yeah, some of the second order effects is those 3 experts are UX people on your teams, usually internally. So all of a sudden, have you ever been like, our profession is so kind of in the infantile stages still that everyone's kind of using different terminologies. I never know when I'm working with an early career person how much they actually know or not about like UX best practices. I've worked with seniors, like UX design seniors that had very little knowledge of interaction design, um, like like the Jacob Nielsen 10 usability heuristics. They may have heard of them, but they wouldn't know them off the top. This is a great framework to get everyone kind of going in the same direction. And it really like changes everything with your teams because the people designing know. So in a lot of these places, they've adopted it as a requirement. It starts off like grassroots, groundswell up. The stakeholders start liking the fact that we can triangulate with usability. It's no longer just like some expert talking at them. They're looking at numbers that change over time. You can calculate ROI off of this. So how many like UX managers are trying to figure out the ROI of the usability stuff, when all you're tracking is like active time, it's like, it could be, there's some perverse incentives for that. Like TurboTax wouldn't exist, right? Because, or whatever, if you're doing click count, TurboTax wouldn't exist because the clicks went way up, but the time went way down, right? So depending what you measure is what's going to show up as far as your discipline. And I just feel like, I don't know about you, Brett, and now I'm going to get my old curmudgeonly hat on, is like, I feel like we're kind of like gone away from the basics, these things that still matter, that still have huge impact. So this is a way for UXRs to kind of like help the design discipline kind of refocus back to the things that we know to be true, the things that we've have 40 plus years worth of research around. Um, you know, so there's my soapbox.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think that's where we nerd out, right? There's a lot of basic methods that have been lost to time or lost to the influx of uh, or overflow of boot camps hitting our industry, where those that didn't get the foundational methodologies that allow for, quantitative testing, right? Even quantitative usability. I haven't seen a lot of people do that in the right way, and this is a portion of that, right? Or
Yeah.
could be substituted for it. So I think it's such a low effort methodology that gives you both qualitative feedback, because obviously as you're going through this experience or going through one of these sessions, people are talking and people are giving user sentiment or expert sentiment, um, which is all valid, and you can take that why behind what their quantitative responses are, right? So you're getting the why and the so what behind even the numbers, that helps you derive like what the recommendation, what the adaptation, what the design changes should be, and a justification for it, rather than just these numbers. And I know, Trevor, you're a huge critic of MPS, right? And that's largely why, right? Like you don't know why things are trending up or down. You don't really know how to correlate it, or why the experience is happening in the way that it's happening. This gives you a little bit more in order to do that. But I think here, what you're talking about, the 3 point versus the 5 point, the traditional way to do P.U.R.E is that 3 point scale, 1 to 3. But then, would love for you to spend time on how you've even expanded that for that 5 point.
Yeah, if you wanted, I can talk a lot about that. I didn't know if we'd go this deep on it or not. And in the chat, say if you want to talk about something else. But so here's the article that I have about it. I've advanced it from a 3 point scale, which you'll find in Christian Rohr's, here, let's just go to NNG. It's on here. If you just search P.U.R.E, you'll find it. My guess, there it is. Boom. All right, so there's Christian Rohr, by the way. Baller. Uh, so there's your Rotten Tomatoes. This is that graphic. Christian Rohr's, this paper is a 1 to 3 system, and it just says accomplished easily. Like you believe that this would be accomplished easily. It would have notable degree of cognitive load, and it would be difficult for the target user. I found that to be really good for more simplistic interfaces, a very, very good system. But I've only really worked on super complex stuff for the most part. And it kind of always didn't sit well with me. So the first couple of years that I was doing the 3 point system, I was like, "Heh." So I expanded it to a 5 point system. And essentially, well, this was my first iteration of it. I'll skip past that. This just explains how I got there. Um, Essentially, it was like I wanted ones I reserve for there's no meaningful difficulty. So there's no heuristic like violations within it. There was like a one means, under the 3 point system, it was like maybe a little bit of trouble, but not too bad. Well, I wanted a one to be like nothing. I wanted a one to be like there'd be zero, little to no friction at all. And then the main thing I missed was the 5 that I have here was a critical error. There was no way to say users would be unable to do this, right? And there's all kinds of stuff like that. And it always got in this weird gray area in which, it was like I'd give it a 3 under the 3 point system, but it was really more. It was like a 3 plus, but there was no such thing. So I expanded the scope or this, and I give little rules of thumb here. These are not always true, but they were true in the last handful of organizations, the rule of thumb, like if there's one or two violations that are, impactful, uh, then I would give it a 2. 3 to 4 would be a 3. 5 or more would be a 4. That kind of thing. Now, that's really deceiving, and it really muddies the water on the P.U.R.E kind of method. But this has been proven to be consistent and able to be like quantified as just as valid as any of the other as the 3-point system from a statistical reliability. And what I found is mostly it's just like all of the arguments in the converge stage are just around, is it a 2 or a 3 or a 3 or a 4, right? And usually people kind of know no one ever argues a 1 or a 2 or a 1 or a 5. So really you get down in the weeds here. And we found that like when something gets misscaled or misscored, it comes out in the wash because of uh, just the amount of scores that you do within a typical P.U.R.E review. So that's my kind of like high level pitch there. But you can still just do the 3-point system. It is a little more simple. I just prefer to have that ability to say a user would not be able to go past this point. Yeah. Again, I just wrote this out one more time so you can actually see it. I thought this one might be a good slide for people. Just they share their screen. The adjudicator assigns the steps. Adjudicator writes a short note in some way. I do this in a spreadsheet, but you can do it in all. I have one team that does it in Miro, like on stickies. They do it like a workshop, which is kind of cool. And then once all the scores and notes are in there, then the subject matter expert moves on to the next step, and then you just do that over and over and over throughout the Zoom call. And at the end, you've got the score. I typically will facilitate these while the expert adjudicators are kind of learning about this after they've been onboarded to the system. Oh, another thing about when you're putting together your expert panel, I always try to have one advanced person on there, like at least one person that kind of has done P.U.R.E before, is familiar, and is the most senior. I would highly recommend that. It does help in the converge stage at the end. And then I forget why I showed this, just because I thought it was a nice way to synthesize everything into like another 5-step process, right? So once you figure it all out, this is how you can actually run one of these. And by the end, you will have all the data you need to make a report with the graphs and stuff. It's pretty cool. And then here's all the second order effects. Is there anything you want to talk about the scoring? Is there any questions anyone has? Because this stuff I'm giving such a higher overview right now. It's like ridiculous. But I've written, like I said, I think that article about expanding the P.U.R.E system is probably like a 3,000 word article. There's probably 20,000 words in that list that I put together about thoughts on P.U.R.E if you want to really dive in. And this one too. Did you share this this link in
Yeah,
the chat? Okay,
share
great.
that in the chat. Yeah, we have a question of, hey, can you go back to that previous slide with the scoring? Seems to be some questions about that. I think what would be
This?
helpful, Trevor. Nope, I believe the your article with the actual scoring. Yeah,
Oh,
there.
sure.
I think what would be helpful is like if we were to simulate, right? Imagine that we are on a P.U.R.E and uh, giving a guided task, and then how the expectation of what you've seen, those participants going through and how they go about, giving those ratings, and then from there, um, how would you make sense of it, right? We've used an Excel sheet in the past where it just calculates it for you, so super easy. Participant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. That's able to actually go through it, but then uh, you know, if you could just give a quick example to walk people through so they can have something a little bit tangible to kind of concrete themselves with, right?
Yeah. You mean something like this?
Exactly.
Yep. So this is what I actually use to create those graphs. Um, Here, this is how we really do it. So this column represents the task number. This represents the steps. These were derived from the subject matter expert top task conversation. This is wireframe / page title, whatever you want to call this. In your, if it, whatever. And then this is the action that's done. So log in, find, learn, da, da, da. And then you just type in your, oh, here's the spreadsheet, right? So you hover over, will the customer realistically do this? You can hover over, it gives you the context from this sheet. It's literally the words that are written under here. So evaluators can do this on their own time. And then they come in, see if you look, this is step 1 is a 5. Let's give it a 1. Changes to a 1. And then it adjusts the score. The aggregate score always results the darkest color. Now this is a 5-point scale. I have one with a 3 as well, but you get the idea. And so this, don't think about, I'm going to hide this. Don't think about, how do you hide in Sheets? Geez Louise. Just pretend you can't. There we go. You don't really, the average friction score is not helpful in most cases. So the whole score at the top is an orange in this case because the darkest color is orange. So there's one thing I totally skipped over is you adjudicate, it's a twofold adjudication. And you think of the color and the number as separated, but they're the same, but they're different in the fact that, like I said, if this were, if we turn this down, this one to a 3, everything will change to yellow because it only reflects the worst score of any one step. The idea here is the overarching score for any one given full aggregated P.U.R.E review is defined by the worst moment within the user's experience. That's why it works that way. So what happens, so when you look here, what happens in the case, so why is this a rule of thumb and why is it not like exactly 3 to 4? Why isn't it like simple math like that? Because the colors are separated think of the colors as impact. So when I train people on this, I kind of have them do a little mind trick of their own. It's a great question, by the way, whoever asked that. So what I have them do is I first have, you can see here, step 2, adjudicators assign that step a number. I first have them assign it a number and then retroactively go back throughout the heuristics and try to map what they found to the heuristics. Because I found that many people's guts on this are fairly accurate. They're fairly accurate. And then they go through and then just the knowledge that they're going to have to go map it to a heuristic is what really matters there. And furthermore, at the end, when you have all these things done, the subject matter expert has this as a document too. So in my reports, I always put a link to this raw data, and they could always go through and oh, there's a 3. Why is there a 3? And they can scroll along here and say, oh, and there's usually notes in here from every one of the adjudicators like, hey, you shouldn't have made that a hidden button. Why is there a hamburger on a full, why are you using a hamburger on a wide viewport, like stuff like that. So I kind of answered the question, but not really. I just wanted to clarify the fact that the colors are more, so there are many cases in which it's a 4, but there's only one real heuristic that's been violated, right? So this says 5 or more. It's almost like 5 or more just normal, 5 or more places in the rubric that you can, in this scoring rubric, that you can make little notes. You can think of it like that. Maybe it's 5 bullets under one thing. Does that make sense? So like visibility of system status with the hamburger menu. Maybe there's 5 different reasons why that violation has been breached and will create problems. And then that results into your 4 number. Does that make sense? So, but my recommendation for the real world is just have them pick a number, map it to the rubric, and then have them hash it out in the converge stage. And that's really how we get good, valid results over time. And I've tested this. Like I know for a fact that the numbers are, they're good, valid, and helpful, and you don't get this wide bias swing. Is that how is that? It's kind of complicated and it gets into weird, sticky situations. But oh, here, let me read the actual. Are the 1 through 14 shared in the Zoom chat? Oh, I can share this document out there. So Chris Ring asked if there's one, if this, I can just share this doc. How do I do that? Share with anybody? Viewers? How's that work? Also, Brett, you could make a version of this your own. You could house it on your website or something if you want. Oh, I see people streaming in. Hello. feel free to take a look at that. That's just how I think of it. Um, I will do one note. I have had people say, can we add accessibility to the end here? I've tested this out. I've made a good faith attempt to include accessibility into the rubric, and it frankly, it's at the wrong level of fidelity, so it doesn't quite work at this level. Because what it does, it transforms a pure audit into a like a QA session, right? People are, could you right click on that? Could you inspect the element? Is there an ARIA label? Like stuff like that. Like how is this done semantically? Like, so I believe that accessibility should be a requirement and floodgate that happens at a higher level than a heuristic review or a peer review. So just like you wouldn't, you know, handle that in other ways. It should be a different set of criteria. It should be part of the QA process, I believe. If anyone was thinking about, hey, where's accessibility in here? Oh, and here's the beauty of this. At the last few organizations, we had anywhere from 6x to 8x time reduction from an old school heuristic review to a pure audit. And that includes that you have 4 people instead of just one. So it's 4 people spending that much time is still less time than a single person doing an old school heuristic review. And I believe they're much more useful in the real world because it creates these graphics. You speak straight to stakeholders and all these second order effects here.
Yeah, it's the digestibility. I think you spoke to it well. It's a lot of the rooms as we go into as researchers. This is how a lot of our executive teams like to be communicated with, right? Show me the numbers, show me what we're doing, show me what the improvements are. And Pure does a good way of doing that. And you know, like Christian says in the article, right? Rotten Tomatoes, very real world aspect of being able to grasp that. In terms of you know, learning Pure and being able to upload your teams on this or download your teams on this, we're more than happy to set up time with anyone that might be on the call today to go over how to do that, train your research teams in order to do that, and then you know you can take it and implement it into your organizations as you see fit.
Nice. I also, within these articles, I have links to these templates for free too. So you can find them in there. Like, you know, one of those links that makes you make a copy. Um, yeah, so I mean that's kind of the overview. I just want to make it clear that first of all, this is just by this like 45 minutes that we've been talking about it is probably not enough for you to actually do this yourself. But it gives you an idea. And this is the kind of like if you're going back and looking at this recording and you think this may be helpful for your organization, just feel free to show them this recording. This is a nice overview. It kind of explains some of the things. Um, and I've literally seen all these second order effects happen in the real world. Like there's nothing here that's hypothetical. That's my whole shtick is like, what does this really mean, right? Let's go past the theory and into reality. And when we do these things, people are starting to use the same language. Stakeholders are starting to look at usability as a real thing simply because it's being talked about in ways that they understand. Um, Early career colleagues are just like built-in upskill mechanism because the first drafts are stronger of designs because everyone knows, oh, my design will eventually be held to the standard of the 10 heuristics. You know, it's just like this really great virtuous cycle. And I think the number one thing that I see when people adopt Pure as a system across a larger team is the cross collaboration. I've spoken to so many managers that are like UX managers that are like, um, you know, if your team is distributed, they spend so much time in like meetings in which people like crit meetings and meetings where people just show what their work is. You know, like it is a built-in cross cross project kind of like a collab session, right? And it's very structured, and it's structured around UX. I don't know if you've ever been in a critique where like a design critique where people like basically arguing their thoughts, feelings, and not based in any kind of rubric. It just cuts through all that noise, and then it also uh, it's good for morale because like people no longer you're no longer saying, you know, like Brett didn't like that design in the crit. You know, it's not that. It's not like Brett has criticism or Trevor has criticism. It's it's the team of expert evaluators have, you know, gone through this process that we've all agreed upon and have made a judgment. So it kind of gets rid of all of that uh, um, kind of interplay, and it allows for proper critique. It allows for a proper feedback loop in a way that's not destructive, but can also be super, super beneficial.
Awesome.
How was that?
We are at time. I appreciate it. Obviously, you know, we always like to show Trevor's expertise and also his blog. I'm an avid subscriber, and I think, you know, he feels the love from us coming to all the stuff we like or love every week when he produces it. I think Fridays are usually the time that I see the most action. But you know, go follow UX in the wild. Obviously, reach out to us at Accelerant if you want to learn more about Pure. We can share some of the resources that we went over today, but also we can step in and help teach and evangelize what this methodology is that's almost been lost to time, right? So, Trevor, appreciate the time, appreciate the conversation. I know this is a little sliver, maybe 5% of what Pure really is, and we can go into a lot more detail. We can go into the nuances of it, and you know, from the scaling system to just pairing it up with usability or other things that are just much more meatier. But appreciate your expert opinion and expertise.
Yeah, thanks. I've spent about 8 years on this. So, you know, it's like, hey, here's my life's work in like a couple slides. So feel free to reach out to me. I'm very active on LinkedIn. If you go to UX Research in the Wild, find me on my Substack. All the stuff's for free. I don't put a paywall. I just use Substack because I just used it for no good reason, except because it was like easier to publish from. So nothing's under a paywall. And I do have some people that just pay me randomly though, which is kind of cool. But that's whatever. I message them, everything's for free, and they're like, "We're gonna pay you anyway." I was like, "Yes, okay." But I do have a day job, so it is I'm available to help. You can just reach out at any time, but just know that, you know, I am kind of like infrequent. Like if I don't get back to you right away, it's just because it's not like I'm selling this system or Pure. You know, it's just like this is just what I've done that people seem to like, and now people are asking me to talk about it. So I appreciate the opportunity, and yeah, this has been great. So feel free to hit me up, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Awesome. I think we are at the time, so I'll hand it back over to Bill, who's going to be doing the next session.